Hello everyone and welcome back to the Saku-san channel. Just in case you don't know who I am and you're new here, my name is Lewis. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Now today's episode is going to be, truth be told, I had intended to do a video on a totally different subject, but the actual data got corrupted. So instead of repeating it all again, I decided to do it on a slightly different theme. So today's theme is going to be absolute gems. And they're going to be jazz, funk, and a little bit of fusion. So I count these as the kind of spine of my collection. So for those who may have seen previous videos from me on jazz fusion, it's going to be more of the same. So I'm going to give you all the kind of, from my collection anyway, what I deem to be the actual backbone of that particular genre. So this is going to be jazz, funk primarily, with a touch of fusion. They're all going to be gems for you. So I'm going to go through them, my immediate reactions to, well, not my immediate reactions, but some of the reasons why I purchased these albums, the great tracks what are on these albums. I'm going to leave audio links down below so you can hear them for yourself and decide whether or not you want them in your collection. Now, before we start, those who are familiar to the channel know that I like to do a bit of housekeeping every now and again, just to bring you up to speed on what I'm thinking about in regards to taking the channel forward. So let's get on with it. So first thing, the YouTube community page. I've just started using it, so it's been a function on YouTube for a while now. I haven't used it up until very recently. So what I'm going to primarily use it for is just to give you, the community, those who are watching the videos and have subscribed to the channel, it's going to give you an opportunity for you to know some of my thought processes, and there's going to be a few questions, a few polls, and that sort of thing. So at this moment in time, there is a question up on the community page, which if you haven't responded to it already and you do have the time, please have a look at the question, answer it if you wouldn't mind. It's to do with data collection in terms of helping me to make an informed choice in terms of a possible direction in which the channel and what I do going forward. So if you wouldn't mind interacting, that would be really fantastic. I really would appreciate that. So that's on the YouTube community page. The second thing I'd like to bring you up to speed with is I have started an Instagram page. So I've stayed away from pretty much social media. I'm not really that type of person. But again, in terms of building a community here on YouTube and just a community in general, I thought that I should create means in which you can communicate with me a lot easier, depending on what device, your preferred device. So Instagram was a good way of doing it. Now, to get access to my Instagram page, please look at the banner on the home page. There is a link there. I will also link below what the Instagram page is, and you'll see things from me periodically in terms of what albums I happen to be listening to on any particular day, or something which catches my interest, which I think I'd like to share with you, and we'll take it from there. So yeah, please join the Instagram page if you wouldn't mind, if you're that way inclined. The third thing is to do with my plans for starting a Patreon page. Now, I'm not going to really talk about it here. I will do separate videos about it. I'm just going to make you aware that this is something I'm thinking about. I've done much of the back end of it already. But it's still in the kind of planning stages at the moment, due to I had initial ideas of what I'd like to do, and over a period of time of thinking about it, I've decided to kind of modify these ideas to make it not only simpler for you, but I don't want to over promise things. I'd rather under promise and over deliver rather than the other way round of over promising and under delivering. I don't want to do that. So yeah, I'll be rolling that out. It's not an immediate thing. I'm certainly gonna let you guys know that when it's near to being launched, you're going to get separate videos on it. So it's some of it's going to appear on the Patreon page, some of it's going to appear on Instagram, and some of it's going to appear on the YouTube community page. So it's going to give everybody advance warning of it. It's going to let you know kind of what my thinking is, and if you are so inclined, and I hope that you will be, you will decide to join the Patreon scheme as well. But of course, it's entirely up to you. I'd love you to do it, but it's entirely your choice. So yeah, I won't talk any further about it. So that's the bit of housekeeping for you guys. So as I said, today's episode is about what I consider classic jazz funk with a slight bit of fusion in there, but it's more to do with jazz funk. So I just picked out some albums. They're not at random. They do fit the criteria, but I'm going to go through each one in turn, and I will leave links down below for each particular album and the track that I think is the standout track on that album. So first of all, let's see. This is a 1975 release, originally on Flying Dutchman. And yeah, this kind of got me into jazz. Yeah, this is, I'm not saying it's a seminal album of mine, but it's definitely up there in terms of what really, you know, flipped the switch in my mind to say, like, this is the genre that I want to be into more than anything else. And this is by Lonnie Liston Smith and the Cosmic Echoes, and the album's entitled Expansions. There you go. Yeah, it does look, I'm sure it looks a bit warped there, but that's how the actual image is, and I'll show you the reverse side. As you can see, this is a well-used album. So I got this prior to having like wallets for my covers and stuff like that, and I didn't have like as good a shelving as I do now. I wasn't as that organized, so yeah, it's been through the wars a bit, but it's, you know, sometimes it's nice to see copies which are well worn and well loved rather than pristine copies all the time, which somebody, you know, people barely, you know, interact with. So there you go. So I'm gonna probably on this album, I'm gonna take the title track Expansions. If you've never heard it before, it is an absolute doozy of a track. It's just got everything. It's got one hell of a bass line on it. I'm not even sure who does it. Let's see if I can see. No, it doesn't even mention it on the actual album who the bassist is, unfortunately. That's a shame. But yeah, you're in for an absolute treat. Now, I've got 3 or 4 of Lonnie Liston Smith's albums, and the actual standard of these albums, it's a bit of an ebb and flow. He hasn't got one single album where I would say every track on there is a killer. This is about as near as you get to having perfection from Lonnie Liston Smith, in my opinion. This is probably the nearest in terms of certainly what I have and what I've heard of his back catalogue. So this one is re-released every now and again, not every 2 years, probably every 4 to 5 years it's re-released. So you will be able to find this quite easily on vinyl if you're looking for it. It should be a reasonable money. If you want it on CD or downloadable format, you're not going to have a problem at all with it. But the track from this is Expansion. Ooh, if you've never heard it before, you're in for an absolute treat. So that's the first one. The second one today has an absolutely fantastic cover. I've got to say, puts a smile on my face every time I see it. So this is a 1976 release on the Chess record label, and it's called Sophisticated Funk, and it's by Jack McDuff. I think that's brother Jack McDuff. So let me show you the cover. Ain't that a beauty? That's an absolutely beautiful cover. So yes, in general with Jack McDuff, I've got again 2 or 3 of his albums. Usually with him you get one particular track on an album which is outstanding to my tastes anyway, and the rest is kind of mediocre. This one again is a really good example of his particular work. There's 4 tracks on here. It's a 8-track album. I'd say probably 3 to 4 are solid tracks, but I'm going to leave a link down below to the track that I think's the highlight from this album. And yeah, you're going to get some bass lines on on this one. You're going to get quite a bit of fun. There's no doubts about it. Yeah, it's just something else. I'm just trying to see if there's any standout musicians on here. No. But yeah, that's, like I said, 1976 Chess record label. You're in for an absolute treat with this one. In terms of finding it on vinyl, now I think you might be lucky with this because a lot of people are aware of it but haven't listened to it, so you might be able to find it in the wild quite easily. Particularly a sealed copy, you probably find a sealed copy easier than you'd find a second-hand one. Definitely on CD and download, not a problem at all. You should be able to get this for reasonable money. When you start like hitting Blue Note sort of money, then I would probably hold off on it. I'd say that's a bit too expensive for what it is. I got this for an absolute song when I purchased it, but I do realise what with modern pricing that if a retailer will probably try and charge you the premium. Try not to let that happen. It's worth it as an album, but at a certain price point. So that's just my opinion on it. If you hear it and you really do like it, then pull the trigger by all means. But yeah, fantastic cover. Jack McDuff, yeah. Sophisticated Funk, does what it says on the tin. The third album today is an absolute classic. The album itself is not a classic, but the track that I'm going to highlight from it is an absolute worldie. It's on originally the Delight record label, and the album's entitled Light of the World, and it's by Kool and the Gang. So there you go. Let me show you the reverse side. Yep, and this gatefold as well, so you can see it for yourself. So, yeah, it's Kool and the Gang. What more do I need to say about it? They've got a mixed bag of back catalogue. A lot of their stuff is on the more kind of commercial end of things, but prior to, and I ain't going to criticize them for it. You got to pay off your mortgage and send your kids to school and college, so you got to do what you got to do. But as an original band, when they were like their earlier versions of them, they were far more gritty and probably artistic than what they came to be in later decades. Again, no shade on them. Their back catalogue is of tunes, catchy tunes, is really something to believe. Now, on this particular album, the track that the reason why I bought it is a track called Summer Madness. It's a slow tempo track. So anyone who's kind of like into jazz funk already will already know what that tune is. But if you've never heard it before, I'm going to leave a link down below for you to hear it for yourself. Now, it's a 2-step track. But again, it's got a phenomenal bass line on it, and it does convey what it says on the tin. you can smell summer. You can smell the heat in the air when you listen to the track itself. It's an absolutely gorgeous affair. There's a couple of different versions of it. This is the shorter version, the album version, but there is a longer one which is, I think, 7.5 minutes long, something like that. But both versions are very good, and I think I do own both versions. It's a dreamy affair. It's a track to fall in love with. It really is that good. Yeah, you're not wasting your time in any way, shape or form with it. It's something else if you've never heard it before, and you probably have, but you didn't know who did it. So yeah, that's the track Summer Madness, Kool in the Gang. The album's entitled Light of the World. Yeah, you should be able to, certainly this pressing of the album you can get relatively easily from a retailer, and I would hope that you could get it for reasonable money. A original is going to cost you. I'm not sure if it's worth getting the original. It depends on what your taste is. Again, on CD you're not going to have a problem. It's going to be probably easier to get it on a compilation than as an album in itself, and downloadable versions is not going to be an issue in any way, shape or form. An absolute classic, absolute classic. The next album, let me just take a sip of my coffee, give me a second. The next album well, as an artist you may not have heard of her, and if you haven't, I'm glad to introduce you to her. This particular album is a 1973 release on Fantasy. The album's entitled Naturally, and it's by a talented lady called Letta Mabulu. Let me show you the cover there. There you go. So at one stage, Letta was an absolute muse of the kind of jazz R&B scene in the late 60s up until probably late 70s. That's probably, I kind of feel that her decade of influence took place. Now, I think South African by birth, came over to America, just did her South African kind of influenced style, which wasn't really something in the American market, and just took the world by storm pretty much, and rightfully so. She's a true talent. Yes, so on this particular album, she is, in terms of musicians, it doesn't really go through all the musicians who are on this album, but of note, the Adderley brothers, both Cannonball and Nat Adderley, do the instrumentals in the background, and you really do hear the quality of it. The track on this particular album that I would highlight to you is called Afro Texas. If you've never heard it before, again, you're in for a treat. It's a barnstormer of a track. To find a copy of this album, I don't think it's been re-released anytime recently, so you probably have to find the original. If you shop around, you should get it in for a reasonable price. On CD, probably easier to get it on a compilation rather than on her own individual CD version of this album. But again, I would hope that you could probably find it, but certainly downloadable, not a problem. If you do find a vinyl copy, try not to pay over the odds for it. In terms of an album itself, this one's got 2 tracks on it, undoubtedly. The album is an acquired taste. You have to like that South African vocal jazz style. If you're not really into it, or you're not sure about it, then just be aware of how much, don't pay over the odds. I'd be uncomfortable if you paid silly money for it, because although I like it, I made sure I bought it at a good price. I wasn't interested in necessarily, just throwing money at it, despite loving the tracks on here. There's no doubts about it. I love the tracks, but I could have held off until I found it at a reasonable price. So again, Afro Texas, 1973 release on the Fantasy label. So yeah, I'm going to leave a link down below so you can hear it for yourself. Beautiful track, beautiful funk. Right, the next one, again, an all-time classic. It's on Blue Note. Let's see what year it came out. It came out in, I think, 1975. Yes, I think so. All right. It's an album called Pressure Sensitive, and it's by Ronnie Laws. There you go. Yeah. So Ronnie Laws, part of the Laws family. There's loads of them, both male and female. Every member of the family is like super talented and got solid careers in and of themselves. But Ronnie himself is probably the most prominent. It's between him and Hubert Laws, his brother. I'm not sure. They're both in jazz, but they got slightly different tastes. But I'd say in terms of accessibility, and probably the one who's known more for his tracks is probably Ronnie. I've got maybe 5 of his albums. Again, a lot of his albums are hit and miss in terms of the tracks and the quality of them. But each album will have an outstanding track on there. So when you are purchasing like a vinyl version of his albums, please bear that in mind. Try not to pay over the odds for it. I think most retailers, you'll be easier to get a original copy than a repress. A repress, I haven't seen one of these in I don't remember even seeing a repress of this particular album. So you should be able to get it, hopefully for a song. Try and get yourself a good copy of it. Now, on this particular album, let me see if there's any outstanding musicians. Joe Sample's on here. That's probably the most notable name. So on this particular album, there are 2 tracks that I'd say are probably outstanding. Tidal Wave, which is absolutely astonishing. But the track that I'm going to recommend from this album is Always There. You've heard probably 6 different versions of Always There. This one is different. Yeah, straight instrumental. Yeah, the saxophone playing isn't like high end, but in terms of enjoyment for a jazz funk fusion kind of tune, it works perfectly. Again, a summer tune. It again, like the Kool and the Gang, it just gives me that summer flavor. It just does what it says on the tin, and you can see from the smile on my face, it's just me thinking about the tune. It's an outstanding one. So as I said, repress, I haven't seen one. If you are going to buy an original copy, just do your research. Just don't buy the first one you see unless you know it's at a reasonable price. Get yourself a good copy of it. CD, I'm not even sure to be quite honest, but downloadable like from a streaming site or something like that will be really easy. So the track on here, Always There, on the Blue Note record label, 1975. Yeah, an absolute corker. The next album today is an absolute astonishing album from an astonishing musician. So we're talking jazz drummers here. And this is let's just see if I can figure out, 1973 on, let's see what label. Give me a second, sorry about that. Should have been more organized. On Buddha Records. The copy I have in front of me is a repress, and it's a lovely repress at that. It's the album's entitled Love from the Sun, and it's by the jazz drummer Norman Connors. There you go. There you go. Lovely, 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 lovely. It's a gatefolded one, so you can see that for yourself. So with Norman Connors, I've got quite a few of his albums. Again, his back catalogue of tunes is absolutely extraordinary. And this one just fits that same bill as well. Let me tell you the artists who are on this album with Norman Connors. Herbie Hancock, Hubert Laws, the brother of the aforementioned Ronnie Laws, Eddie Henderson, Gary Bartz, Buster Williams, Carlos Garnett, and Dee Dee Bridgewater. That's overpowered. That group. That's as good as you're going to get anywhere, to be quite honest with you. The quality shines through on this. The track that I'm going to leave a link to down below will be Carlos 2. It's a more slower paced tune than some of the other ones I've presented to you so far, but an absolute screamer of a track. So again, if what I'm hoping is from listening to that track, this album, and the rest of Norman Connors' work, particularly the earlier stuff, the later stuff is more, it gravitates to more the more commercial side of things. And again, don't blame the guy. You've got to pay a mortgage, got to pay for your kids, maybe a divorce or something. You just don't know. So you can understand that. But his body of work is unbelievable. It really is something else. And this is a fine example of his work. Yeah, you can't go wrong with a track on here that I'm going to present to you, Carlos 2. And hopefully it's going to inspire you to listen to his back catalogue and maybe get some of it for yourself in your collection. So, recent repress, you're going to be paying good money for the repress. Is it worth getting the original? Yeah, if you can find it for a reasonable price. I wouldn't be this particular repress is absolutely wonderful, and I think in terms of weight and the actual vinyl itself, it's probably better than the original. So be careful if you are purchasing it on vinyl. Be aware that you probably get better value for money, probably for the repress, than for the original. So bear that in mind. But if you can get your hands on the original, or you can get yourself both copies, if you can, if you live in that type of world where you can get yourself both copies of it, do that. On CD, not even sure. Downloadable streaming version of it, I wouldn't have thought there's a problem. Maybe there is. I don't know. But yeah, this album is still available in the wild. You should be able to get it. But as I said, there's a premium price for this particular repress copy. Yeah, you're going to have to pay for it. But I think it's worth it. Well, I certainly do, because not only do I like the tracks on here, I've got enough of his work already that, yeah, I just had to have it, that type of thing. So beautiful cover from a talented jazz drummer. You're in for a treat. Right, the next one, you're probably, do I think you're going to know it already? Probably. For the experienced vinyl purchaser out there and likes their jazz vinyl, that kind of genre, yeah, you probably will know it, probably. But for those who don't, I'm really glad to introduce you to it. This is on 1976 release, originally on the Sanctuary record label. This is a repress. Right, the album, it's a self-titled album, and it's Wood, Brass and Steel. Lovely cover, memorable cover. And I like the reverse as well. Just look at the dudes there. Yeah, that's how to take a group photo. I love that. So in and of itself, it's not a fantastic album. It's definitely of its era, and yeah, I'd say if you are trying to purchase this on vinyl, because I don't imagine it to be super cheap or anything, bear in mind, well, certainly from my point of view, it's a one-track album, and I was happy to spend it because I'd heard the track from decades before, fell in love with the track, and as soon as I knew that it was available, I had to have it. I had to, you know, pull the trigger on it and just like, I'm having that. The track that I'm going to leave a link down to below is called Funkanova, and again, it's just a high energy jazz funk fusion tune, which again puts a smile on my face. Hopefully you'll feel the same about it as well, but it's a more of an energy track. Yeah, I can't tell you much about the band themselves. I think they've got maybe 2 albums. I didn't do any research on it, and I didn't like the second album. I didn't think there was anything on it for me. I might change my mind on hearing it in years to come, but certainly at this moment, this is the one album that I want from this particular band. And yeah, as I said, repressed in the last decade. It's been re-released, so you should be able to find a copy of it somewhere. CD, I'm not entirely sure how easy it would be on CD to find it. I ain't got a clue. In terms of streaming or downloading, I think you should be able to find it relatively easy, because if it's not on an album in and of itself, it's going to be on some kind of compilation, so you should be able to find it. But yeah, the vinyl itself for this repress, beautifully packaged, beautiful weight to it, blemish free, really happy with it. So as I said, 1976 Century record label, wood, brass and steel, and the track is going to be entitled Funkanova. So there you go. Right, we have maybe 3 left. The next one is a recent repress, and that's the version that I've got. It's originally on the Crossover label. Let's just see. Originally released in 1974. The album's entitled Windows of the Mind, and it's Billy Brooks. Yeah, jazz trumpeter. So this album's a bit curious in the sense of it's a mixed bag of high energy tracks with kind of like more traditional, what I'd consider traditional jazz on there as well. So it just shows you the type of person, the artist he is, in terms of he went for, obviously he put on the album what he wanted. It was to demonstrate probably pretty much what he could do as an artist. Normally either people stay with high energy or more traditional jazz. This is more of a mixed bag. So there are maybe 3 tracks on here of note, but the one that I'm going to present to you today is 40 Days, and this is a 9-track album, and I'd say maybe 2, possibly 3 tracks on here are worthy of your consideration, but 40 Days is the track that I'm going to leave a link down to below, and it's just cool. It's got kind of like a soundtrack vibes to it, but at the same time it's a standalone tune. So yeah, it is worthy of being on some kind of film score, but it isn't. And I think it has been sampled by quite a few other people from hip hop. I'm not sure who they are, but I'm sure it's the kind of track that you would get samples from. Yeah, it's this particular album, when I bought it at its highest price, and I thought it was going to be a limited availability. I've still seen these out in the wild, vinyl versions for reasonable money. I mean, now is the time to kind of get it. It's at its lowest price. Probably when you see this video and you start buying it, the price might creep up again, but certainly at this moment in time, compared to what I paid for it, you're going to get it at a reasonable price. CD version, probably be able to get it relatively easy. I think your problem might be in terms of downloadable or streaming versions of it, because he's not a big name, so you might struggle to get it in that format. But certainly CD, vinyl, shouldn't have a problem at all. And like I said, just go into it knowing that it's not a consistent album. It hasn't got a consistent voice. It does change throughout the album. But if you like the track 40 Days, then yeah, you'll just buy it for that. And at the price that I've seen the vinyl for at this moment, it's probably well worth it. So, Billy Brooks, Window of the Mind, 1974, and originally on the Crossover label. So there you go. So I'll show you there, just in case I didn't do that earlier. Right, 2 more to go. Yes, so the next artist I'm going to show you is from the Blue Note label, and I have quite a bit of her work, and her catalogue of music is outstanding. Let's just have a little sip. Yeah, she's got an outstanding back catalogue of tunes. Yeah, and I was glad when this one was re-released. The original I'd seen was exorbitant amount of money for what's the content of this album. And I've got to be honest with you, I don't like... I'd be lucky if I like 2 tracks on this album, to be quite honest with you. So when the repress came out, I knew I wanted a clean version of it, of the album, and it was at reasonable money. I think probably at this moment in time, with Blue Note pricing policies, it's probably crept up. But the track from the album that I'm going to show you, before we continue, the album is entitled Black and Blues. That's Black and Blues. The artist name is Bobby Humphrey, and the track that I'm going to be leaving a link down to below is Harlem River Drive. There you go. Yeah, flutist, jazz flutist, seminal jazz flutist. Yeah, she's extraordinary, her body of work. Yeah, just got really great albums in her catalogue. So Harlem River Drive, there's at least 2 versions of it out there, not by her, but it's one by her, one by somebody else, and I can't remember who the other person is at this moment in time. Totally different tracks, and you kind of like, I like both of them because I own both of them, but this is a seminal piece of jazz, funk and fusion, more on the fusion side of things. It's a fun piece, again reminds me of summer. I'm sure I had a mixtape with all these tracks on there, and that's probably why I've got fond memories of it, because I'm thinking of, you know, just going around, driving around with a mixtape with all these classic tracks on there. So yeah, look out for her back catalogue. She is an extraordinary talent. This album in itself, as I said, maybe 2 tracks from it. I was happy to buy it because I wanted a really good clean copy of Harlem River Drive. I just wanted it, had to have it. But bear in mind, you are dealing with Blue Note prices, so don't pay over the odds if you don't have to, and you either can be patient or just wait until there's a sale or something, then grab it then. But certainly something, if you like jazz, funk and fusion, and you like the classics, this is one that you should really consider really strongly. So let's see if I can see when this was originally released. I think it's 1973. Yeah, I think so. I'm relatively sure it's 1973. Yeah, just absolutely, the track that I'm mentioning is an absolute barnstormer. Can't go wrong with it. Talented woman. Album's a bit, but the track itself is really good. So if you see it out in the wild, yeah, due diligence is required. CD will be really easy to get. A streaming version or downloadable one, you're going to find that pretty easy. It's just a vinyl one and how much you're willing to pay. I wouldn't even know what an original of these costs. If I have seen them in the wild, it may have been like a one-off and they're going to charge you for it. Try and get the repress. If not having originals are, sorry, If originals is all important to you, you're going to pay over the odds for it. If you don't mind whether or not you get a repress or not, then you should be able to find this well, not even find it relatively easy, but hopefully you can find it for a good price. I'm hoping for your sake that you will. I certainly bought it at more the higher end of what I want to spend on a repress, to be quite honest with you, but I wanted it. So there you go. I'll leave a link down below for you to hear it for yourself. And the last album today, again, another seminal album, and this is what the whole intention of this particular roundup is. It's a 1978 release. This is a repress. Probably an English version of it. So I've got it on the Ace BGP record label. That's a nice bit of vinyl, as a matter of fact. It's got a lovely bit of weight to it. The album's entitled Night Grooves, and it's by the Blackbirds. You know, Donald Byrd, that kind of thing. So yeah, more of the same. So Blackbirds is his band. And let's show you the reverse side. So yeah, again, this is a seminal jazz funk fusion type album. There's quite a few tunes on here. From just like a cursory glance, there's 3 tracks on here which are of note, which quite a few people, you probably have heard it and just didn't know who did it. So if you already know about it, then this is basically confirmation that you've got great taste. If you've never seen this before or never heard it before, I'm glad to introduce you to it, because you're in for an absolute treat. The track that I'm going to be using for you to hear as a sample down below is Rock Creek Park. Rock Creek Park, an absolutely seminal jazz funk stroke fusion track, which, again, like with a lot of the albums I've shown you already, is more on the danceable side of things. You're in for an absolute treat. The Blackbirds have, I think there's quite a few albums, maybe 4 or 5. I may be slightly wrong with that, but Donald Byrd, in and of himself, the band leader, has maybe about 10 albums. So he goes from straight jazz, then he transitions into jazz funk and fusion, and it's like 2 separate careers. His jazz side of things, I can take it or leave it, but certainly when he hits the fusion era or the jazz funk era of his career, that's where I just switched on. And yeah, he does some extraordinary work. I'm trying to see if the Mizell brothers are involved in this one. Not that I can see. No, they could do, but it's got that kind of sound. But yeah, I don't think they were, because they would have made some kind of note of it. Yeah, so I'm going to let you hear it for yourself down below. You're in for a treat. Again, another seminal summer tune to like just get it going. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. To find this particular repress out in the wild, you should be able to find it with a bit of research. Hopefully you can get it for a competitive price. Certainly in the UK you should be able to do that, because there is an English repress imprint of it, so like this one, so you should be able to get it all right. If you are in America, you should be able to get this one. They're like a no-brainer type thing, and I would expect you to pay the lower end of things. I think you should be able to, whether it's a repress or an original, I think you should be able to do well in terms of pricing. That it's not going to be over the top pricing for it. It's for 3 tracks. Yeah, it's worth your money. There's no doubts about it. If you don't have these tracks already, you need to have them in your collection if you like jazz, funk and fusion. If you do. If you don't, then this is a waste of time. But yeah, just listen to it for yourself if you've never heard it before. And if you already know it, yeah, you already know what I'm saying. So that was the last album today. I'd like to thank you for joining me today. It's been a really kind of compared to the what I was going to do as a video, this one has certainly kind of like, yeah, it's made me happy. I'm glad that a fault in the system happened where I had to change my mind as to the content of the video. So yeah, happy listening. Please remember, on your way out, please consider, well, if you could hit the like button, I'd really appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider that as well. And in the future, I will do videos on smaller videos about my plans for the YouTube community page, the Patreon page, and the Instagram page. So thank you for joining me. Stay safe. I will see you soon for another video, and I'll update you about all the rest of the other things, my ideas going forward. So until then, I will see you soon. Take care. Enjoy. You just have something. It's going to be happy listening. Yeah, you're going to enjoy yourself. Take care. Bye bye.